Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about Florida's Florida's recruiting class for the 2024 early signing day recruitment year. And Florida fell off terribly from their number 3 overall spot on 247's rankings. They went from number 3 down to 16. They had 20. It was like 23 commits at one point. At least that was the highest total, and then it went back down to 18. And it wasn't just going down from 23 to 18. It was high-end talent that left the class. So we're gonna get into it right here. This is Kevin Brockway of the Gainesville Sun. Rocky National Signing Day for Florida ended on a positive note with the signings of five-star DJ Lagway and five-star edge rusher LJ McCray. Overall, though, the Florida Gators struggled to close on some key commitments as four-star linebacker Darius Hayes, a four-star defensive lineman, Amaris Williams flipped to Miami and Auburn, respectively, early Wednesday afternoon. Florida entered the week with the nation's top 5 national class. As I said before, they were at the top 3 at one point, but that was when they had Wardell Mack and Jamonte Waller and Xavier Filsaime, but they lost out. And not only did they lose out on Xavier Filsaime, Hayes, and Williams, they also lost out on three-star receiver Isaiah Williams to Texas A&M. We anticipated some. Hold on, sorry. We anticipated some nutrition, Napier said. Reality is what we might have been okay with some of it. You find out a lot about where you're at when you go through a process and how things are handled to some degree. It goes back to if you don't want it to be here, let's go ahead and get that out the way now, especially in today's dynamic, because if they get it wrong now, then maybe it's not right for them. Napier is bullish on the potential of the rest of the class, which address some weaknesses on both lines of scrimmage. We have young men that were up for the challenge. Some weren't up for the challenge, but this group that we're here to talk about today and celebrate today decided, hey, you know what? I believe in what's happening here. I'm up for the challenge. So here is the commitment class right here. Let me get rid of this real quick. This here is from 24/7 Sports. DJ Lagway, LJ McCray, Miles Graham, Fletcher Westfall, Aaron Charles, Amir Jackson, Kenan Daniels, Jere Hawkins, Tawaski Abrams, or TJ Abrams, whichever he prefers. Josiah Davis, Mike Williams, Jaden Ball, Brian Taylor, Teddy Foster, Gregory Smith, Michael Boeo, Marcus Maskell, Nordo Portenjogen, Chamir Dike, Trequazy Bridges, Joey Slackman, and Brendan Crenshaw Dixon. So overall, this class, if you want to include the transfer portal as well, because in today's college football, the transfer portal is included into the recruiting grading metrics as well. So overall, they did address some needs. Like I said, they added more depth. They added Williams, Maskell, the transfer from San Diego State, and Fletcher Westfall. So it's about 4 offensive linemen that you've added. Florida definitely, sorry about that, definitely needed some depth. They needed the more big bodies because they went through so many injuries last year. They also sent out a transfer offer to Marco Tarquin, who played for Florida a couple of years ago in Billy Napier's first year. So Florida fans will be keeping an eye out for that. The good and the bad and the ugly from this class. Let's start off with the good, because I've been very critical of the staff, but you know what? I'm going to give them some praise where I think they do deserve it. I do believe in complimenting a coach when I feel like they deserve it, because I am objective. I'm not just negative. I go with what I see. Now, here, DJ Lagway from Willis, Texas. That was by far the biggest get Florida had the entire class. If you had to lose all your commitments, but at least keep one in tow, it would be Lagway, because he plays the quarterback position. And quite frankly, he might be Billy Napier's last hope of lasting at Florida for a couple of years. So there was a little bit of drama because Texas A&M and USC especially were pushing hard for DJ Lagway, but he's been committed to Florida since he committed to the team last December. So that was a full year commitment to the school, and he seems like he was really, 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 really locked in. I mean, I entertained some visits with Clemson and other teams, but it seemed like he was deadlocked on playing at Florida straight from the beginning. You have LJ McCray. This one had a little bit of turbulence to it as well. Actually, more so than Lagway, if you think about it, because teams like Auburn and Florida State were trying to flip him to their schools. But he stand packed. It looked like he wasn't going to sign his letter of intent overall in during this week, but something changed, and you know what? He decided last night that precisely, I think it was like 8 o'clock Eastern time, that he was going to stay in the state and play for the Gators. Miles Graham, who's been committed to Florida since actually he was committed to Florida way before Lagway was committed to Florida. He committed to Florida in the summer of 2022, not 2023, 2022, not this past summer, the previous summer before that. So he's been locked in well longer than Lagway. You have Fletcher Westfall committed to Florida out of Virginia. I believe it was July. Aaron Childs, when Florida had that big recruiting weekend that they had earlier in it was either earlier in the summer when they landed Williams and Nasir Johnson and Amir Jackson, who we'll talk about in a little bit. They also landed Aaron Childs in the mix of it, along with others. Those guys left. Aaron Childs stayed. So did Amir Jackson. But you know, Aaron Childs coming out of Maryland. You know, Florida was in his top three, fighting alongside Michigan and Maryland for him. But he chose with Florida, and he stayed with Florida ever since. Amir Jackson, big time pass catching tight end threat out of Georgia. You know, Georgia was gunning for him, of course, being that he's from that state. So I will say, if there is some good out of this, is that Florida did beat out some of these big time programs for some of these recruits. You know, DJ Lagway, like I said, with Texas and USC as well. LJ McCray had to fight off Auburn and Florida State. Miles Graham taking him from the state of Georgia along with Amir Jackson. Kanan Daniels, I think he's the sleeper of this class. He might be one of those freshman contributors that Florida has had over the last couple of years. You know, 2022, it was Shamar James and Trevor Etienne. Last year, it was a plethora of freshmen: Eugene Wilson, Jordan Castell, Kelby Collins, and TJ Searcy. I think with Trevor Etienne transferring into the portal, I think that leaves a big spot, a big competition open for that running back room. You know, you have Karen Cameron, who's come from Tulane, the transfer from Tulane, who's coming off of a knee injury. You have Trayon Webb, who looked pretty good as a freshman. When he did get his reps, it was a very minimal amount of reps. He'll be coming in competing for that spot along with another running back commitment that the Florida Gators got on Wednesday. You have Jeray Hawkins here from IMG Academy. A lot of people believe that he's going to be the fastest player on offense for the Gators. And he's going to have some competition with Eugene Wilson and Aiden Mizell and Tawaski Abrams, who you see right underneath him. Tawaski Abrams from Fort Myers. That's where Deion Sanders is from, Fort Myers. And so you got a couple of speedsters to go along here with Amir Jackson and Kanan Daniels. So some nice additions to the weaponry, considering Florida is going to be losing out on Ricky Pearsall and Trevor Etienne. No word on whether or not Montrell Johnson is going to come back. I will say that he has until January 15th to make a decision on whether or not he's going to declare for the NFL draft or not, because he is eligible to enter the draft after this past season. I know I've said continue. I've kind of have like slotted Montrell Johnson as a number 2, but that's because Trevor Etienne was in the room. It never meant that I disliked Montrell. I just didn't think he was better than Etienne. But I do think Montrell is a good running back. And if he comes back to Florida next year, he is definitely Florida's number 1 running back now, because he will be the best running back, as opposed to Trevor Etienne, who I thought was Florida's best running back last year. But I always did like Montrell. I always liked how hard he ran. I always liked the fact that even though he was a big dude, he could hit he had home run capabilities. Josiah Davis, Mike Williams, you have Jaden Ball. That was the other running back that I referenced earlier, talking about that committed to Florida on Wednesday, along with a defensive back from Sumner High School, Gregory Smith III. Jaden Ball and Kanan Daniels help, I think, cushion the blow of Trevor Etienne leaving, because now you get 2 running backs, which I think the Gators have been trying to do for the last couple of years. They've been trying to get a 2 running back class anyway, because in college football you can never have enough good running backs. You got Brian Taylor, JUCO transfer, and rated as one of the top JUCO prospects that was in the transfer portal this year. So it's not necessarily a bad get for Florida just because he came from the JUCO world. Teddy Foster, big tall corner from Sarasota. he was he was the eye of Corey Raymond's. He was the apple of Corey Raymond's eye when he was still here, and he's spoken with the Florida Gators' new defensive back coach Will Harris, and they seem to have hit it off real good because he was one of the loudest people to support Will Harris when he was hired. You have Gregory Smith, who I talked about. Uh, Florida's looking to play him as safety, and to have a 6'4", 200-pound safety, it tells me that they might be looking at him as run support because Florida doesn't really have that true run support hitting safety. Jordan Costello is more of a playmaking coverage safety, but he's not really a run support guy. So I think that's the plans that the staff has for Mr. Smith the third. Makai Boyle, he was a previous Florida committed to Florida in the spring, way before the hot recruiting summer that Florida had. He committed to Florida in, I believe it was May or June, one of those two. And then he decommitted but committed back to Florida. And their final two guys right here, offensive lineman Marcus Moskal and Norder Portenjagen, who's from Germany. He's a big dude, 6'5", 334. And now we get into the transfer portal additions here. You have Chimere DK. I think this was probably the best get that Florida had of the entire day, because rather than not being a recruit who's going to learn to play college football for the first time, you get a guy who has the experience, gives you punt and kick return value. So he helps you out in that area, and we all know how bad Florida was on special teams last year. And you have a probable starter at the wide receiver spot along with a Eugene Wilson, and now I think you can have competition to see who's going to be the other guy to compete alongside him. Florida lost a couple of receivers, Caleb Douglas and Child Bowman, who entered the transfer portal. You have, I think Caleb Douglas went to Texas Tech, if I'm correct. So Chimere DK, who has good chemistry with Graham Mertz, who played good for Florida last year. So Graham Mertz is gonna have two security blankets at the wide receiver spot with Chimere DK and Eugene Wilson. Now you just need to know who's gonna be the third receiver. I would bet that I would hope that maybe it's one of the two guys. Maybe it could be Andy Jean or Aiden Mizell. But I think there is a good possibility that one of these two receivers right here, Tawaski Abrams or Jerry Hawkins, they could possibly compete for that spot. And at the tight end position, Florida actually might be pretty good at the tight end spot now. This is probably the best depth that Florida's had at the tight end position in quite a couple of years, because you have Amir Jackson coming in, and he'll be behind two tight ends who the green light started to come on for them throughout the year. Hayden Hansen, of course, Arlis Borningham. So weaponry-wise, I think Florida's actually starting to stack up all right. You have Traquazy Bridges, who is a defensive back from Oregon. It says cornerback, but some people are saying maybe they can have him play safety. I think they're going to have him play. I think there's a good chance they'll have him play corner. He's a big, tall dude, 6'3", 198, a tall glass of water, and he'll be an immediate eligible person. You have Joey Slackman from the Ivy League. He was viewed as one of the best prospects in the transfer portal coming out of Penn. And as you can see right there, the 92 overall rating as a transfer, that's a pretty good get for Florida, because they were kind of hurting for depth at defensive line last year because of some of the injuries that they got, and having some of the defensive linemen leave, like Chris McClellan and Will Norman and Princely Uman Mielen, having those guys leave. So it'll be good for them to have some depth at that position. And you have Brandon Crenshaw Dixon to be in that offensive and be in what should be a competitive offensive line room next year. So there are some goods that I can say about this recruiting class. Now I'm going to talk about the bad, of course. The bad, obviously, you lose out on Hayes and Hayes and Amaris Williams, and you fall, and you have such a massive fall from the number 3 overall ranked recruiting class down to 16, and that's just, oh man, that is such a knee to the stomach in terms of your recruiting momentum. After you built it all up, and to have it fall apart like that, that's not good for any head coach, let alone a head coach that's going to be on the hot seat next year like Napier. So that's bad. And another bad sign is that you're losing your staff. Now, losing your staff, you lost out on another coach Yesterday, because actually no, earlier today, because it's apparent that Jay Bateman, who helped Florida recruit the two linebackers Graham and Aaron Childs and Adarius Hayes, they're going to be looked at. Bateman is going to be hired as the defense coordinator for Texas A&M for Mike Elko, who just got hired from Duke. So that's a bad sign. The fall from grace, the losing the commitments that you did, and losing out on a pretty good recruiting linebacker coach. And the ugly is that what's so ugly about is that it even further sinkens the lack of confidence that the fan base, myself included, has in the program right now. It's just not a good look. I mean, once again, it looks pretty bad on the entire on the athletic administration, not just um, the coaching staff and the NIL program. Their administration is just looking more and more incompetent. That's back-to-back years now that Billy Napier, starting off hot in the recruiting thing, has ended it on a bad stretch for early signing day. And this one was even worse because he had top end talent and lost almost all of it. The only top end talent he kept: Lagway, McCray, Graham, Aaron Childs, Fletcher Westfall, and Amir Jackson. And after Amir Jackson, there's a little bit of a fall off towards the rest of the class. No disrespect, but that's just how I feel. You know, you lose out on Hayes, you lose out on Filsamy, you lose out on Amaris Williams. Now, here's the thing: Wardell Mack, Nazir Johnson, and I think those guys and Jamonte Waller, I think those guys would have flipped anyway, regardless of how Florida finished their 5 game stretch, because they flipped in the middle of Florida's 5 game stretch. So that tells me that they were thinking about it for quite a few days. The way Florida ended the year is what helped them lose Adarius Hayes, Phil Simi, and Amaris Williams. I think if Florida had ended the year on a better note, and I'm not just talking about winning one game and heading into bowl, I'm talking about winning against Arkansas, not giving up the 4-17 against Missouri to at least get you to 7 wins, and then oh my goodness, if they had pulled off the victory against Florida State, that would have really solid. I think Florida's top 3 class would have mostly stayed in put. Maybe a couple of decommitments, but I don't think it would have fallen off as badly as they did. So if you're Billy Napier, you're gonna have to hit the transfer portal even harder. Right now it's the 21st, so you still got 9 days left of transfer portal activity. You need to hit the transfer portal and help solidify some other positions as well. You still need depth at linebacker. I would continue to bolster the defensive line, and I would continue to look for offensive line. So I don't think those 3 issues have been solved yet. I think you're good at. I think you're pretty good in the secondary. I think you got some nice players at the receiver position, at the pass catching, and got some nice pass catching tight ends. I think you've helped solidified your running back depth a little bit, but offensive line, linebacker, and defensive line, I think still need some help. And in football, you cannot have deficiencies at offensive line, defensive line, and linebacker because that is the meat and potatoes of the sport. So overall, if to be positive, if I did have to give a grade, Florida's early signing day grade, I'll give them a C. I'll give them a C because of what I said about how what. No, I'll say C plus actually. Let's make it a C plus because of what I said. Keeping Lagway and keeping McCray, you did keep some of the good players that you got from your recruiting class that you had early in the summer, like Childs, Westfall, Amir Jackson, and Miles Graham, and you did bolster your running back depth a little bit, and you added some nice speedsters in Tawaski, Abrams, and Jeray Hawkins, and you did land a nice wide receiver from Wisconsin in Chimere Dyke. I'm sorry. So C plus grade for the Florida Gators early signing day class.